Evening, guys. We're just gonna wait a few minutes for everyone to come in. But I'm Hannah of Love More People, and I have a couple of awesome pals on, a couple of awesome women. So we're just waiting a few minutes. Zainab is in the room. We are officially live. So we're just gonna wait a few moments to give everyone time to come in. I'll recheck the YouTube page to make sure everything is fine there. And then we'll start. Uh, um, oh, all right. I see a couple people are on. Thanks for coming on for those that are on. I appreciate your sacrifice. For those that are on, um, that are viewing, how are you doing? How is your week going so far? Happy Friday. For those of us that are stateside, we don't have work tomorrow. For those of us that are stateside and do, sorry, try to make your work Saturday as fun as possible, I guess. Um, but thank you for coming on. How is everyone doing? How is your work week? Your regular week, all that good jazz. All right. So this is from the page. Okay. So everything is good there. And then, no, not YouTube. Just waiting a few more minutes. Hi, Sister Kennedy. How are you? Carolyn and I used to go to White Plains together many moons ago before she just up and left for sunnier shores in Florida. How are you doing, Carolyn? Thanks for coming on. For those that are viewing, can you guys see everything fine? Are there any like weird things going on? Everything looks good on my end, but for the viewers, I want to make sure that it is as clear um, as possible. Uh, Hold on. Just waiting a few more minutes for a couple more people to come in and give like a nice little 5-minute buffer or so. Um, excuse me. Yep.
What else happened?
Oh, okay, there we go. Oh no. I'm having like a senior moment, and maybe one of you ladies can help me. Um, how do I know if I successfully went live on YouTube? Because I'm looking at the, oh, you know what? I'll do this. I texted it to someone earlier. So I'll check to see if it went through there. Just waiting a few more minutes. Us to handful more, and then we will start. Um, yep, we're live. Okay. Um, Elise, can you put your number in the private chat just so that I can send you the link? Because I found it. um, but yes, we're good on um YouTube. So, and we're good on the Facebook page, so we can officially start. Um, Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you guys so very, 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 very much. My name is Hannah Love. If this is your first time ever, ever, ever tuning in, my name is Hannah Love of Love More People. Wear several hats under the Love More brand, but this is Love More People. It is a nonprofit designed to offer much needed services and resources to underserved um, communities free of charge. So you find that on our Instagram page, we drop a lot of like nuggets daily, whether it's financial, whether it's health, whether it's your mental health, whether it's learning a brand new word for the week. There are different things that are dropped there. We'll be going into phase two this summer. We've been doing these talks. We started them last summer. So this coming summer would be a whole year since we've been doing these talks, and we've had different topics. We've done social justice and race relations. That was shortly after George Floyd passed. Um, then we've done the health edition where we had different medical professionals on. Zainab was on that one. She represented the doulas. Cheyenne was on the first one. Um, we have done the Justice Center where we actually got to talk with attorneys and officers to kind of explain what the Justice Center looks like, both on the streets and in the courtroom. We've done, I'm forgetting one, finances, where we talk about your money, we talk about your credit, we talk about savings, um, taxes, starting a business, all of that good jazz. So, this is, I believe, our fifth talk, and it is appropriately titled When Faith Meets Life. Oftentimes, we have isolated conversations within our comfort circles. So, African Americans talk to African Americans, Asians talk to Asians, whites talks to whites. And what happens is we're not having the conversation at a table with multiple people. And so we're in an echo chamber. If I only talk to an African American about issue A, I will only learn it from the African American experience. And while that might be beneficial when you're a child, it becomes very dangerous when you're an adult because now you don't have other perspectives to glean from, and now you're not as well rounded as you could be. So the purpose of United Nations of Women is to literally have different cultures, ethnicities, classes, all represented to talk about the same issue so that Margot can go back into her communities with the information that she has offered and learned from a different perspective, right? Darnisha can do the same, Elise can do the same, Zainab, Cheyenne, and Vidya can all do the same. We're taking the information that we learn and we're pulling it back into my community so that when I hear someone say something that's wrong, I can check them and it's not coming from a fleshy place. It's coming from a, no, I actually had the conversation. What you're saying is actually inaccurate. Let me correct you. So that is the point of these talks, and that is the point of Love More People, to literally share knowledge, wealth, and information. So we're going to start with the awesome bios. If you had a chance to go to the foundation's page or my personal page, you would see the bios on both sides. So we will start with Darnisha. She's an African American Christian. She resides in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She received her bachelor's in theology from Oakwood College and her master's in divinity from Andrews Theological Seminary. She is the associate pastor of the Southview Seventh Adventist Church and focuses on children's ministry and family ministry. She also has a podcast titled The Sister Pastor Speaks. And since the onset of the pandemic, she has been doing a lot of baking. So that is Pastor Darnisha Thomas, and she stands in for the Christian voice. Then there is Vidya. Um, oh, honey, can you pronounce your last name, please? I'm so sorry. I don't want to ruin it. Hold on. Uh, say it again. Can you pronounce your name? We can hear your
Ragotra. Vidya Ragotra.
Ragotra. Okay, so Vidya Ragotra. Um, she is actually, and this is our first time I can actually say this, we have officially gone international. Vidya officially lives in India. So that's kind of cool. It is currently 6 something in the morning over there on Saturday. So I'm super honored and very grateful to have someone in a completely different culture country um, here to offer her knowledge and expertise. So she is Indian. She is Hindu. She resides in Delhi, India. She attended and received her high school degree from Nirmala Convent School and her bachelor's in computer science and engineering from a university in Pune, India. In her local assembly, she is a preacher of Bhagavad Gita. I'm sure I
Bhagavad Gita.
okay. I, I know I'm gonna mispronounce it. I'm sorry, honey. And Krishna stories. She started her career as a software engineer, but she works as a relationship coach for Parivartan Transforming Lives. Her relationship coaching is not just husband and wife or boyfriend and boyfriend, boyfriend and girlfriend, girlfriend and girlfriend. It is parent to child. It is coworker to coworker. So she addresses all aspects of relationships that you would have with another human and gives you the tools and the skills to navigate through conflict resolution, and just building a harmonious, healthy person to person relationship with one person to another. In the last 11 years, she has helped working professionals, mom, and newlyweds resolve relationship issues with parents, children, spouses, partners, and coworkers. So that's Vidya. And now we have Elise. Elise is a Caucasian American Jew who resides in Kew Gardens, New York. She received her bachelor's in communication from SUNY Albany. She is the co-host and social media manager of the Tea Room podcast, and they just launched their 35th episode. And she once studied in Tel Aviv for 6 months. So if you get a chance, follow her podcast on Instagram. I tagged it in all of the posts. Fun fact, Elise, Margot, who is next, and I all went to the same college together. And we affectionately called Elise Shalom. That was like her nickname on campus. And it kind of still sticks, but it's literally from like a very loving place. And then Margot is a Caucasian agnostic and atheist, and she resides in Michigan. She received her bachelor's in biology from UA and her PhD in biochemistry from the University of Maryland College. Her cats are named after characters from the portrait of Dorian Gray, of which she's never read, which I thought was kind of interesting. And she's also learning how to embroider. So that is Margot. She will be speaking to the agnostic and the atheist voice. Elise will be speaking to the Jewish voice. Cheyenne is an African American and Native American, Blackfoot to be specific, agnostic, and she resides in the Bronx. She received her bachelor's in international studies and master's in psychology with a concentration of global psychology. She works with the Muslim Sisters of Staten Island. MSSI is also a nonprofit community based organization that works with underserved women and children. Cheyenne is an author and she is currently working on her latest book project entitled Monsters Among Us. Some of her poems are on her Instagram page. So when you get a moment, run to her Instagram page and listen to her work. It's really, really good. Like it's really good. And last but certainly not least, we have my love bug, Zainab, who is an African American Muslim. She resides in Brooklyn. She studied at Post University before beginning her journey as a mom. To date, she is a proud Umi of 5 kings. She is a successful business owner. She is a caterer and a chef. That business is called the Bougie Soul Food, and she is the Bougie Chef. And she is also a doula. That business is called the Conscious Doula. She was actually on a previous talk. So if you want more information on looking for a doula, finding a doula, what a doula actually does, feel free to check out her the one of our previous talks is called the Health Edition. And she can give you more information there. Feel free to connect with her afterwards as well. And when she is not working and raising her young king, she loves to record herself dancing because who doesn't? We all dance. So yes, so she did my brunch in October. And the food was slamming. Oh my goodness. Tahima was there. She just posted and she was like, the food was good. It certainly was. It was worth every penny and then some. All righty. So let's start with the first question. I just had it. Okay. The first question is tell us a little bit about the tenets of your faith, if this applies. So we have an agnostic, an atheist, a Jew, a Christian, a Hindu, and a Muslim. Everyone's has different beliefs, right? So take a few moments and explain to us what your faith is. What are the tenets of your faith?
Well, if you see, there's nothing called Hindu. It is Sanatan Dharma that we follow. It will be a news to you that Hindu is a name that came by mistake. It is a dharma. All living entities are
Wait, hold on,
Sanatan.
video. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Mm-mm. Hmm. Try your headphones and see if that does the trick. And we'll all mute.
Am I audible now? Okay. I hope it's echoing now. What we follow is Sanatana Dharma. Means eternal. Eternal is we are souls. We continue to exist even after the destruction of body. So the aim of life, the main tenet of this faith is the aim of life is all the living entities are eternal. They are Sanatan, and we are supposed to live in this abode with the Sanatan Supreme, who is all who and eternal. So this is a tenet of faith where we live with love and compassion. It is living and serving others. When we love the Supreme, then we start becoming more compassionate and humble and start serving. So this is the main tenet of the faith that I follow. In Gita, that is the main book of Hindus, it is mentioned Sarva Count Murtayaha Sambhavati Yaha. It means that the Lord is the father of all, are the children of the Lord, the Supreme. And Lord, we actually, the aim of our life is to reconnect with the love of the God, express and give with compassion. So, so compassion lifestyle is actually inseparable from us if we see that is equally dependent on nature. And we have this clear understanding. Everybody is equally on nature. Then stop it and we start caring, giving, serving others. Be it every living entity is a sacred spirit. It can be, it really doesn't matter who is, it's not a bodily consciousness if anybody is Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jew, or Jain, Pars. You can be from any different, one can be from east or west, a human body, a body, man or woman, human body, and body. You know, wherever there is life, it is sacred. We care for each other. When we come in contact with ourselves, we come in contact with the Supreme, then we all are related to each other. And now we live with compassion and harmony with each other.
It sounds so sweet and like I'm floating on air the way you describe it. Thank you so much. Who else who would like to go next, rather?
So for me, I identify as agnostic. However, I was raised by a Christian mother. She doesn't practice Christianity, I guess. She's not devout. She practices it a lot more loosely as she's gotten older. So with my beliefs, it's really just basically learning about other religions and finding truth in all of them. So it is safe to say that I am more spiritual. I do believe in a higher power. However, I do not identify with a specific sect or specific religion in particular due to certain conflicts and my own other beliefs or experiences that I find that sometimes contradicts my understanding of things. So I guess that's just long story short of my agnostic beliefs.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Okay, you can hear me? Okay, great. So I identify as a Reform Jew. So there's different types of Judaism. Reform, I guess you could say, is like the least religious. Then there's conservative, which is more religious. And then there's Orthodox, which is very religious. I'm sure you've seen, you know, exactly the people that I'm talking about. Although even within that, there's a very big difference because there's people who I know people who live in New York know, but like Hasidic Jews, they have a very specific type of dressing and they're in the Orthodox, I guess you could say, umbrella. But then there's also modern Orthodox where they won't be in the same attire. I was raised by both of my parents are Jewish, but my mom came from more of a religious background. Specifically, her parents, my grandparents, were quite religious. They were pretty active in their synagogue, which is their place of worship. In terms of Judaism, if you were going to look at, I guess, the tenets or the main, like if there were like 5 things or a couple of things to say about it, we believe in one God. We believe in human beings being rational, being good to others and good to family, having a close relationship with God, also giving back, and especially giving back within, if possible, within the Jewish religion. Also, it's very big, especially for people who are more religious, to continue uh, carrying on the religion. It's a bit complicated, but especially, and I'm sure before, but especially after the Holocaust, that was a big thing, that, you don't want to end up having a very small population of Jewish people. You want to continue that lineage. So those are, I would say, the about section of Judaism. But then again, I'm in the least religious section. So I'm sure that somebody may tell you a very different definition.
That was cute. This is the about section of Judaism. That was very sweet. Okay, Margot, Darnisha, Zainab. Who's next?
So I waffle back and forth between agnostic and atheist, and I think the reason that is at heart I'm a scientist, and so as a scientist, I want proof. That is what I was taught to do, is to find the proof. So on the one hand, there's no physical proof, but on the other hand, there's no proof for or against. So for that reason, I would say agnostic. I am not personally spiritual. There have been times in my life when my best friend lost her mother, and I prayed, not for me, but it was for her, right? And so that's just a personal thing. I guess if I had tenets of my faith, it would be more be kind, listen, and be understanding. But I think that's just what good people should do, more than just faith, I think. But that's just me.
Here's a fun fact. So Margot was my RA our sophomore year of college, and from then we just kind of only ever lived with each other. Sophomore year, junior year. Once you find someone that you can live with, especially if you dorm, you kind of don't stray away from it. Anyone who's ever dorm, at least you know how difficult, Darnisha, you know how stressful dorming can be. And our senior year, we had like a huge senior year, second semester was like a shaking, so to speak. Um, I won't go into too much details to protect individuals involved. And Margot would make it very clear, exactly as she has just said. I waffle back and forth. You better believe Margot made me a cup of tea and prayed. And if anyone knows, I am like, Jesus out. You cannot tell me personally that Jesus does not exist. However, Margot was able to put down her belief system temporarily if that meant doing something that brought me comfort. So I will say that is the core of who Margot is. So that rings very, very true. All right. Darnisha Zainab is next.
Okay, I guess I'll go next. So coming from a Christian background, just for those who are not familiar with Christianity, there are various sects and denominations within the Christian faith. And so basically, my Christian denomination is Seventh-day Adventist. So we believe, what stands out to us is we believe in the Sabbath, which is the biblical Sabbath, as mentioned in Exodus. So so Friday, happy Sabbath, Shabbat Shalom. So that's this is our time for us to rest, just rejuvenation. That's our way of being able to worship God. Even though it's not that we only worship God on Sabbath, it's just our way of communing and having that connection with God. Along with that, we have in the Christian faith, we believe in one God, but then there's also God the Father, God the Son, which is Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. So that's the 3-in-1. It's that connection that they are together. They look out for each other. The Holy Spirit speaks whatever the Father speaks. Jesus is the human representative of the Godhead, as mentioned in John 1. Another factor for us is we believe in the second coming, which is where we have the word Advent. We believe that Jesus is coming. Though, yes, October 22nd, 1844 was known as the Great Disappointment, and a lot of people were really blown for some kind of way because Jesus did not come when, as many would have predicted. But just because he didn't come, we believe that it doesn't mean that he's not coming. So we believe that Jesus is coming. We believe, as far as the afterlife, we believe that death is asleep. So basically, life, of course, life is over, but we believe in a resurrection. When Jesus comes, that those who have passed, they will resurrect and we will all be in heaven. So that's basically our afterlife approach. And for me, I am not your typical Adventist. like my sister Elisa mentioned, the different types of approaches. The typical Adventist stereotype is those who don't eat meat, those who they're rather conservative. They don't wear jewelry because of modesty. It's based on it's a teaching of modesty, but that does not mean it's actual doctrine. That's just how people that's their approach to modesty. But there are some of us that we do eat meat, but we a good portion of us we eat based on what is considered as clean meat. So we don't eat shellfish, we don't eat pork, we don't eat anything else. So there's a lot of breakdown. So we have similar um, dietary restrictions from our Muslim and from our Jewish brothers and sisters. So and we eat. I go kosher and I go halal, and hopefully, my sister Z here. I'm gonna butcher your name, but I'm hoping that you can throw down for me because I'm like, you the go-to person, so we know who to go to support. But yeah, so we have this approach, also the image of God. That's something important for us, that we are called to treat others with respect, love thy neighbor as yourself. That's our approach. That's based on the personal work of Jesus. So that's basically what a Christian is to live in accordance to the person and work of Jesus Christ.
Thanks for sharing, Darnisha. And Z, you are last. Go on, babe.
Okay. Hello, ladies. And thank you again, Hannah, for bringing me back. What a pleasure. Um, so, like a few of you, I don't want to say I'm in limbo, but I'm not your average Muslim. That's what I tell people all the time. Yes, I was born and raised as a Muslim. I do identify myself as being Muslim or being a believer in Islam. Um, but where I am to date, I'm more so on the path of spirituality than anything else. Because for me personally, based off of experiences, different information, um, my thoughts about certain things, there's like conflict for me in certain areas. And personally, for me, I have friends who are Christian, I have friends who are Jewish, or Israelite, I have people who I'm surrounded with who walk in different faiths. I've gone to church, I've sat in on services. A word is a word. I believe you can get it from anywhere. You just got to figure out how it applies to you. Um, but in my heart, yes, I would say that I'm a believer, but I'm just not your atypical kind of Muslim. Um, and in terms of like the tenets of Islam, the way I kind of broke that down was more or less. So in Islam, there are 5 pillars, and those pillars are your shahada, and that's basically your declaration of faith. And so you're either born into Islam or you take your shahada. Um, in my case, my shahada was given to me at birth by my father. Where there are some people who may have been Christian all their lives, or they've been whatever faith and decided to then convert to becoming a Muslim. Of course, prayer is a big one, or salat, which Muslims are supposed to make that 5 times a day. I'm guilty. I do not necessarily do the actual ritual of making salat, but I do pray constantly. Um, there's also something called zakat or sadaqah, and that's basically giving charity. Um, and that's something you're supposed to do. To me, it's like ongoing. No different if you went to a church and they pass around the offering plate when you go to service, or you go to Juma or the masjid on Fridays. You give your offering, your tithe, in that sense, your sadaqah, your zakat. And it doesn't always have to come in the form of money. You can feed the hungry, you can clothe the poor. Like, there are things that you can do in terms of giving sadaqah or zakat. But of course, the easiest thing for some people, or the most convenient thing, is giving money. Then there's fasting, which, and I think in most walks of faith, most people fast. Muslims are very well known for fasting during the month of Ramadan, actually, for those 30 days. Um, so that's another one. And the last one is your Hajj, and that's when you make your pilgrimage to Mecca. You can do it as many times as you want. However, at least doing it once, if that's what you're supposed to do. I have yet to do it. Hopefully, I would like to do it. I know it's expensive to try to do it, but we'll see. But yeah, that's pretty much the 5 pillars of Islam. Um, just really quickly, so we can move along. For me, again, because I have friends who walk in different faiths, and I'm more or less on the spiritual journey. Though there are a lot of things in Islam that I agree with, and that I co-sign with. Um, I also believe heavy in the Ten Commandments, right? And I just think being a good person, being kind, being empathetic, being sympathetic, not lying, not stealing, not cheating, just being, like Margot said, just a good human being. I think if we could just live by that, the world would be a better place. And that's basically it from me.
So I actually just wanted to bring up an interesting point. I was just reminded that when you were talking, two things. So firstly, the you said an Arabic word for giving back. You said two different words, and I didn't, and one of them sounds very similar to the Hebrew word for giving back or for charity. And then you also said something else about the what was it, the pilgrimage to Mecca. We have something similar. It's not so much a pilgrimage like you need to do, but it's like an ascending back to Israel. So it was just similarity. And then also we do fast, not for as long as you guys do, fortunately. But it's just interesting because I feel like there's a lot of similarities that I feel like people don't know on a surface level, but when you really dig deeper, there's a lot more similarities. And I think if we could focus more on those, hopefully we'd be coming together as opposed to being further apart. I didn't want to interrupt you, so I wanted to wait until you were finished.
So here's a fun history fact, right? Anyone who knows me knows that I am a big history nerd, right? Biblically, Islamically, and Jewish culture-wise, right? Those are the three religions that are the most similar, and here's why. There's a song that we grew up singing as children. Father Abraham has many sons, and there's a reason why this song applies now, right? Remember, Abraham had 2 children. Ishmael was the eldest, right? And then Isaac was the youngest. Ishmael was born from Hagar, right? That's a slave who was one of my like ultimate favorite Bible characters. When I get to heaven, I just want to sit and have tea with her and just ask her how it felt to be a handmaiden in like real life and not watch the Handmaiden Tales on Hulu because it's completely different. But the point is, Hagar was the mother of Ishmael. Father is Abraham. And Isaac is the son of Sarah, father Abraham. If the same father parents 2 children, wouldn't the morals and values be the same? Or at the very least, very, very similar. So there are some things that Zainab does in the Islam faith that Elise does in her Jewish faith, and Darniche and I do in our Christian faith, or that Cheyenne grew up doing because it's the same father, 2 different children. So my blood sister and I, even though we are 2 children essentially cut from the same cloth, my perspective on life is going to be tailored by my experiences. Her perspective on life is going to be tailored on her experiences. Isaac grew up in a 2 parent household. Right? This is a typical stereotype. 2 parent household, loving parents. The wife was chosen for him. Ishmael was sent out at 13. So when Ishmael is supposed to be learning how to be a man, his man kicked him out. Like, imagine being sent away at the age of 12 or 13. You get your period and then we'll figure life out on your own. I'm sending you and your mother out with a sack of bread and a flask of water. Figure life out. You can't imagine. And they didn't have psychological counselors then that we do now. They didn't have support groups. They didn't have group therapy. They didn't have um they didn't have mental health counselors and life coaching. They didn't have any of this. So you have a child who, even though 13 is when a boy becomes a man in Jewish culture, that's when they take their bar mitzvah, girls take a bat mitzvah, I believe at 12. He is essentially learning how to be a man without his father present. And it's not like his father died and Hagar had to figure it out. No, his father sent him away. So now there's a father complex. There's an anger streak. And we also remember that at one point, Hagar ran away from home and was so angry that her anger poisoned Ishmael. So Ishmael was already born with like an anger streak on his back, right? We know this is where the Muslim faith comes from. Not to say that all Muslims are angry, because they're not. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying if we look at what happened in their family structure, in the religious structure, in their culture at that time, it would make sense that I believe in fasting. I just fast several times a year and different durations based on what God is telling me to do at that time versus Zainab doing a very strict Ramadan once a year, right? It would make sense that Elise believes in giving back, and Darnisha preaches from the pulpit, we give thee but I know, remember to keep the tithe in the storehouse. It makes sense because it's one father and two children and two very different approaches to the same teaching that was given, right? So it's super important that we understand that. This is why it's hard for me to hate a Muslim. I don't care what society says. I can't hate you because if I go back to my genealogy, I technically should be a Gentile. That's number one, right? Like I'm a whole Gentile because I wasn't born a Jew, nor was I born a Muslim. So let's start there. And two, I can't hate someone who genealogically, I said that wrong, wise or way back when we had the same father. The same DNA that runs through Z's vein is the same DNA that runs through mine because we have the same father, right? So just wanted to put that tidbit in there.
Well,
One of the questions,
real
no,
quick,
no,
I want to piggyback because one of the things I love about reading the story of, especially with Ishmael, was that God told Hagar that Ishmael was going to be blessed. His children was going to be blessed. And when we keep looking at the scriptures, when Abraham died, Isaac and Ishmael were both there to bury their dad. So that shows that relationship. And then when we keep reading about the story of Jacob and Esau, like when they had their fallout, Rebecca sent Jacob to her brother's place. But guess who Esau was staying with? His
Ishmael.
uncle Ishmael. So it shows that there's that connection. There was no strife between Ishmael and Isaac. There was that relationship because Isaac could have said no, telling Esau like, no, don't go to don't go to Ishmael's house. But no, but like we see it that Esau ended up going to his uncle Ishmael's house. So that was something I wanted to throw there, and that was what caused me to like have a greater respect and understanding, for both Judaism and Islam. So that's all.
Yep. All right. So one of the questions that I had originally asked was, how has your faith shaped your moral and core values? I think, and how has your faith shaped your view of others and your worldview? It's very safe to say that we can skip that question because the foundation is being good people, right? Margot said it, Cheyenne said it, Vidya said it. If we are following the tenets of our faith, we're going to be good. There's going to be a measure of compassion. Like Darnisha said, when you start to dig into the story and dig into the history behind what's happening, there's going to be a measure of grace that you extend to someone whose approach to their walk looks a little different than yours, right? Like Darnisha mentioned, typical Adventists don't wear jewelry. Z will tell you I'm a whole heathen. I will tell you I have one toe in and a body out, right? Like I'm a believer, Team Jesus. I love Jesus, but I will wear jewelry because my salvation isn't rooted in how I'm presenting myself. This is my perspective and this is my approach. If I treat Z the same way I want to be treated, if Margot treats Vidya the same way Margot wants to be treated, by default, the tenets of our faith has shaped us into being compassionate and good people. Um, so now we are going to go to one of my favorite questions. We're actually back to back. So, how does your faith experience your higher power? Right? For those that apply. So, Vijaya, how do Hindus experience their higher powers? Because I believe that you come from a polytheistic religion, right? Um, how it is it intimate in close quarters? Is it public with other people? Are certain things frowned on when in public? So, what does experiencing your higher power look like to you?
See,
Anyone?
in my opinion, the spiritual part that any spiritual path that we follow is a transformation of character from within. We move from arrogance to humility. We move from selfishness to selflessly serving others, and then we move from greed to generosity. So when it comes to experiencing the higher power, realize during the trying circumstances in life, we always bank on the supremacy of higher. We do realize that there is a spiritual intervention in our life that is going on. Things that are beyond our control. We might say we do faith in all those things, but the thing is, if we say that I don't have faith in old age, does that stop us from aging? If we say I don't have faith in death, does that stop us from dying? So in that sense, when we are experiencing higher power, we experience it on daily basis. There are so many souls that are getting bodies on their daily basis. So many are there. So many deaths, so many diseases around, and old age. These are the four problems essentially that they solutions. No matter it matter be delayed, it can be postponed. So, in these trying circumstances, when we take the shelter of the Supreme, I'm a Hare Krishna. So, I believe Lord Krishna has his special hand in every situation that we go. And the whatever it helps us in becoming calm and composed in all these situations and reacting. We just respond to the situation and we realize let's have patience, that patience, tolerance, kindness, compassion, honesty. So these are the that inherently get inculcated when we feel that being independent is thing. The thing is being on the Supreme Lord is even the best, even more best thing. So this experience, there might be this Hindus in India, there are it is a stick there, it can be frowned upon, but the essence of spiritual path remains same. Whatever spiritual path we follow, if we are going to follow it perfectly, then all these good qualities are to get imbibed automatically, and how we experience higher power in our daily lives.
Thank you for sharing. Um, I kind of like the tenet that you speak to where you say you go from one to another. So in like Christendom language, you would go from your flesh to looking more like the spirit, right?
Yeah.
I find it funny that Darnisha and I did the same hand movements at the same time, but the closer you get to God or the more you experience God,
Yeah.
um, is the more you start to look like. So I found that really interesting. It's kind of like when two couples have been married for a really long time, they start to look like each other. That's what comes to my mind. So I kind of like that. Anyone else, how do you experience your higher power? So Muslims, Zainab, sorry, how do you experience Allah? Darnisha, and Elise, how do you experience Jehovah? And for the sake of this conversation, I'm actually going to refer to the God as Allah and Jehovah so that there isn't confusion. We know that there is a general higher power, but they actually have different names. So Christians would be Jehovah, Yahweh, and then Yeshua, Jesus, and then Muslims would be Allah. So how do you experience your higher power? And I know this is gonna be a little bit tricky for Margot and Cheyenne, since you acknowledge a higher power, but kind of go back and forth between what that higher power is. So what does that look like for you? I guess that would be the best way that you can answer that. So anyone can chime in.
So I just wanted to clarify that we would, we don't, they don't, especially if you're religious, you don't typically say God's name, and we wouldn't be referring to him with the word that you said. It would be, I'll say it because to me it's not a big deal, but like Hashem, that's the Hebrew name, or Adonai, yeah, Hashem, because it means the name. And so we say that instead of like if I went to synagogue, that's what we would say. I just say God. It really kind of depends, I think, because we're not, at least in my family, and the way I was brought up with religion, we it's definitely more of a personal thing. I don't think it's a group thing. I don't think it's experiencing it with a lot of people. I think it's more finding faith when there's difficult time and figuring out that relationship that you have. For example, I do, especially when I have difficult situations, I pray. My mom does, my dad doesn't really. And I think that everybody will do something different. And also I grew up with religious grandparents. So my grandparents were going to synagogue and they would be in a service, and that's how they practice. So they were probably doing it within a group of people. I'm not. I know a lot of people do, but to me, that's just not how I practice. That's not how I find, support in difficult times. But I do pray. We also don't focus on, like, at least for me, not like the afterlife. It's more about like praying and finding, I guess, your individual connection to God.
Thank you. Thank you for the correction. I appreciate that. Darnisha, Zainab, Margot, and Cheyenne.
Okay, so hey, I gotta get comfortable for this one. Okay, so even though I know this is a question that was saved for the end about misconceptions, so as Muslims, people do have this misconception that, like, oh, you guys believe in like a different God. Lies. The devil's a liar. We believe in one God. He just goes by many names. And so the Arabic term for God is Allah. But God goes by many, many names. And I do believe in one God. With that being said, so of course, praying. That's probably the easiest way to feel more connected to God, or, to have those kind of conversations with him, with that higher power. For me, or even just, again, a lot of Muslims will even just go to the masjid to pray and pray together. What is the most beneficial for me, where I feel the most connected? And maybe Hannah, you can help co-sign this. We've had many of those conversations. It is helpful for me to find communion with my sisters, with women who are either Muslim or they're just my spiritual sisters. That's when I feel my most powerful. That's when I feel my most connected. And of course, no, I may not be doing the actual ritual of making salat, that actual prayer. But when you are praying, you really are having that conversation, yes, to God, but it's more or less, the answers. You're kind of having that conversation with yourself. And so I talk to myself a lot. I have conversations and conferences with myself daily, monthly, weekly, minute by minute. Hannah, you're laughing, but it is the truth. I do answer myself because I'm having those conversations. It's real. But that's when I feel the most powerful and connected, when I'm with my sisters and I'm gathered with people, and not so much doing a ritual of prayer per se, but just being together with other women, especially women who believe in what I believe in. But yeah, that's for me personally.
Thank you, Darnisha, Margot, Cheyenne.
So, as I said earlier, like I was raised with some bit of basically some knowledge of Christianity. So for me, my way of connecting, I guess, with the higher power is pretty much experiencing life, getting to interact with different walks of life, because that is something that, regardless of what faith or spirituality, it's that total bond with nature, with people, with living beings is just one of the, it's basically part of the experience. It's part of basically kind of going through the enlightenment. So for me to, like, based on how I was raised to basically learn about different cultures, learn about different types of people, because you can't truly understand a person if you don't have not only dialogue, but at least some type of understanding of them on a ground level. So for me, having these kind of conversations all the time is always normal. And for me, going into global psychology, I mean, for my degrees in international studies, I focused on culture and society, which includes history, which includes language, literature, philosophy. Like, these are crucial things to the human experience that allows me to be more in tune with, my brothers and sisters and other, brethren, basically. Like basically, regardless if you are spiritual or not. And for myself, I even done my own research on how do you use mental health and spirituality, or even atheism. How do you put both? Because this is something that's part of us, it's our identity. Even if we're atheists, it's an identity. Can you use that in order for you to actually continue to cope and live on with the experience that you're living in? So for me, being agnostic, that's actually allowed me to navigate a deeper, grayer area, because things aren't always what they seem, and everyone's experiences are truly unique, regardless of where they're from.
So I'll kind of echo Cheyenne. Well, first I'll start by saying I don't particularly feel spiritual. If someone said pick one, Margot, I'd say atheist. And so because of that, I don't have that spiritual feeling. That being said, something that Cheyenne said that speaks volumes is connecting with other people, regardless of what their backgrounds are, but taking the time to learn them. My background is I grew up in a hometown of 700 people. That's not a lot of people, and that's a very limited background. And so when I went to college, I went to a school that one class was bigger than my hometown. And I started to integrate myself and learn about these other people's lives and cultures and backgrounds. And then I moved away again, and I kept doing it, and I keep doing it. I try to put myself in a situation where I can learn about others, whether it's religion, life, culture. So I guess connecting with myself by pushing myself to learn more.
And Darnisha.
Yeah, so my way to connect with the higher power or with God is definitely through prayer, just connecting, like talking to God like a friend. I think one of the beauties um, of my Christian faith is we believe in a God that's personal, that we believe in a God that is seeking a personal relationship with His creation. And we see things. There's different types of revelation. You have general revelation um, that's accessible to all of us. We have special revelation. So God revealing Himself through nature. Um, I think that's something that really stands out, even in our faith, even as Adventists. Is we go hard about going on a Sabbath walk, going outside, going outdoors, and seeing what God has made outside of nature. Trees and grass, and just seeing how He's someone he's into details. He's creative. He sees color. I think also my way of connecting is through our scriptures. Um, through reading the Word of God, reading the Bible, and connecting and learning from the stories of those before us, and saying, well, if God can do this for this person, He can do the same for me. And I think even just from like what everybody else has mentioned, just through life experience, connecting with people. I love how my sister mentioned about the importance of connecting with people, because in our scriptures, in our holy scriptures, we talk about the idea of forsake not the assembly of your brethren. So of course it goes back to the part in Genesis, in the Torah, where God says it's not lawful for man to be alone. So for that, it does not, and I'm sure we're going to talk more about marriage. It does not mean that we get married. It's basically it's God's way of talking about community. So just the way that no man is an island, that you can't do life alone. I think that's something that's been powerful from that experience.
Yep, I think it's very interesting how different faiths approach their experience with the higher power.
I would
Coming
like
from
to add one thing. See, right now we all are together. We all are experiencing the higher power. It could be somebody else also that have pinged. There was some supreme intervention that shaped all of us, and we all have come together from different parts of the world. So this is a higher power experience that we can experience now. And as said, connecting with scriptures, we could do connect with Lord. Everybody has their own holy book, Quran, be it Bhagavad Gita. Then we chant Lord's name. We pray to Him. We talk to Him. We share with Him. And that's how there is so much of caring in the communities when it is follow spirituality. So how everybody experiences higher power, I feel it's same.
absolutely everyone experiences it in a way that feels natural to them, but challenges them and pushes them to create community, feel safe in community, be a valuable part in community. So I think that's really, really dope. Z, you wanted to say something?
Muted? Yes, I did. So I just wanted to add that so I'm also a birth and postpartum doula. And so another way that I get to experience God for me is every single time I'm in the birthing room and I watch a woman or mother give birth to her baby or babies. That's when that's another way for me to experience the Most High. And it's just a constant reminder for me, like, wow, God is real. He is amazing. Like, to see life being brought into this world, that's what that is for me. And I'm constantly in a birthing room. And so when I'm not, I'm praying, I'm doing these other things, but that's a big part of it for me, being in that labor and delivery room and watching life, um, come forth and watching this baby take his or her first breath. That is amazing. It fills me in a way that is undescribable, and I cry at every birth because it is amazing. It's that reminder, like, these two human beings came together and created this life, and this woman gave birth to this life. It is amazing. It is just mind blowing to me.
Absolutely. Um, I find it really cool that we all experience whichever higher power we subscribe to in ways that feel natural to us, and that also create community. Now we're going to go to, I think this is like my top favorite question. Anyone who knows me personally or intimately, or if you've just randomly encountered me in the supermarket, I'm always doing this one thing. Zainab knows what this is. At least I don't know if you remember what this is. Zainab is giggling, so I'll let you say it. It's singing. I am always singing. I am always humming. I took the phrase "keep a song in my heart" very literally, and that is not a joke. I work with a special needs boy during the week, and I will hum so loudly that his brothers go shh because I don't realize it. Um, so for me, one of the ways I experience God is through music. It is a very integral part of, yes, Miss Katrina said it, singing. It is a very integral part of my faith, of my relationship with God. While in prayer time, I might not have the words to say. I might not have the tears to cry, but I do have a song to sing, and that essentially becomes my prayer. And because God created me as musically as He did, He understands that that is my form of communication with Him. Um, so I'm very, very curious to see how other faiths incorporate music um, in their walk, in their relationship? Um, are there songs that you sing that remind you of your higher power? Are there songs that you sing that encourage the assembly um, to focus all of their attention on their higher power? Like for Christians, we have our worship forms across, right? So this is like a snippet from Love More Music, right? We have worship that is directed from us to God, right? That is the vertical. And then we have worship that's directed from us to the people. So if I sing, "Come on and bless the Lord with me," that's me encouraging Darnisha to bless the Lord. Now, if I sing, "Waymaker, miracle worker," that's me directing my praise to God. So when you have both of them in the worship at the same form, the same service, you end up with a cross, which ideally is what we're supposed to be doing, right? Every day focusing our life on the cross. So what does that look like for a Muslim? What does that look like for a Hindu? What does that look like for a Jew? While that's my take on music, Darnisha's experience with music and her relationship with God may be completely different. Margot, Cheyenne, I'm really interested in hearing how an agnostic and atheist view of music ties in with their relationship to your belief system. So go.
That's actually a really good question. And as you're talking, I'm literally sitting here trying to put this into words. So for me, I mean, Hannah already brought it up that I am a writer, but what I did not tell her is I am also a musician. I play the piano. So for me, music is my first love. The arts has always been my first love, and it's my way of connecting with people, but not just with people, but just hearing the sounds of nature. Because with the native side of the family, just having that connection to nature, whether if it's the sound of the water or sound of like the wind hitting the trees or something, there's always that type of connection, even with the smallest of sounds. And for me, honestly, people would not want me to have the aux cord because it's my taste in music is very eclectic. So one moment you're hearing classical music, and next thing you know, you're hearing heavy metal. It's just completely there's no warning. However, with that ability to have that type of artistic connection or connections with different artistic fields, it makes it makes kind of my connection to people more interesting. It opens more conversations with other people, and some of the ones that I didn't think I would have such an intense conversation with were people who, some of them were Satanists, some of them were atheists, and it's mind blowing when how just maybe one song, whether if it's gospel, country, jazz, blues, anything can actually kind of hits you at a point where it's a life experience or it just moves you. Because there are moments where I can listen to a song, don't know what's going on, I just start crying. Don't know why, but I'm feeling it. And I allow myself to feel because that's what they're basically that is what the emotion is telling me to feel at that moment. May not be happy that I'm crying in front of people, because I'm not really one that expresses emotions in front of others. But when it does, music normally does that pretty quickly. If you want to see me cry record time, put music on, and I most likely will have the tears streaming.
That's interesting. I like it. Anyone else?
If you know, His Divine Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder of International Society of Krishna Consciousness, when he went from India to Square Park, there he just sat and started chanting Lord's name. That he started singing. It was a music. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And so many people joining his music. There was a Sankirtan that he was saying. The congregational chanting of Lord's name called Sankirtan. Everybody joined him and they started clapping and they started singing and dancing on the tune Krishna Mahamantra. So this is how the music connects in Sanatan Dharma, This is how we follow. We chant. It is called as Shravanam. Shravanam is by listening through ears. We listen the Lord's name through ears. Kirtanam, we speak or we sing his name and we glorify him by chanting and uttering his names again and again. And then is remembering. Tishra Kirtanam Vishnoha Smara. We remember also Lord by continuously chanting his name. And this is the method that has been prescribed this time where people are short-lived, where the memory is short, the grasping is short, and they really can't grasp whole lot of scriptures that are present in Vedic wisdom. So the best thing in these times of this memory to chant Lord's name again and again in congregational chanting. So this is how music connects everybody. Even you see all over the world there are more than thousands of Krishna is taken every town, cities, and everybody sings. And that's how we experience Krishna through Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vitanam, Smaranam. So this is the role that music plays. And as far as deity worship is concerned, we do glorify Lord. There are we call it artis, archanam. Archanam is that we do every morning. There is a Mangalarti, glorify our spiritual master through music. Then we'll glorify the Lord through music. Then we will do and we will chant Lord's name. Again, in the evening, there is a musical celebration where everybody comes together and they glorify the Lord. So the entire day, if you see, there is morning, there is Mangalar, evening there is Sandhya Arti, that is in Arti. Then when we worship the Lords or Lord to sleep as well. When they are put to sleep, a Shayan Arti. So in this way, the deity followed in a very elaborate manner. So the routine is set in such a way that activities look just similar like people, every other person. They bring up their children, they cook, they do the job, and they go to office, they come back, and they'll have lunch, whatever it is. The routine same, the actions same. The is behind those actions are different for devotees. What they do is when they'll cook for the Lord, and when they'll cook for the Lord, and then they'll offer the food to the Lord, and then they'll eat it. So the food gets spiritualized. The intention behind cooking is different. When you bring up the children are brought up in such a way that they are trained how we are here to serve the Lord, humanity, live with compassion. The activity of the children is same. The intentions are to serve Lord. And in this way, the music connects everybody throughout the day.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm like learning so much. So if you see my facial expressions, it's because I never knew that. Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, all right now. Thank you.
And then
Okay.
when we go to office, when there is earnings, so a part of earning is also donated to the temples, people who have everything, and they are serving the humanity by teaching by them scriptures like Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srila Prabhupada used to say that no matter what, keep reading books, and you will be connected to Krishna and preach it people tell how important it is to read all these books, and this is how we also distribute it. So the concept from me, mine and myself gets transferred to the and then serving the family transferred to elaborates more towards the entire society. So the earnings are also given it. So everything is spiritualized. Earning with integrity and spending with conviction is what is followed.
Thank you. I legit did not know that. Thank you so much. I didn't know that music played such an integral part in the Hindu faith. Oh, especially down to the chanting, which sounds very similar to how Muslims pray, because it's very not chanting in a monotone kind of way. But the way they recite scripture sounds like it literally sounds like a song. Um, which would be like a shameless plug. See, you can come in here.
Srila Prabhupada literally connected the entire world with this musical movement. Entire world was connected with just this Hare Krishna Mahamantra chanting. So that is the music.
Thank you. I like it. It sounds very pretty and light and free.
Yeah.
I like it. All right. Anyone else would like to speak to how the relationship between music and your faith?
Miss Hannah. So I love this question. Like legit love this question. For a couple of different reasons, and I'll try not to be long-winded. Um, so yes, when Muslims, especially with brothers, young men, or just men, period, they're reciting from the Quran, it can sound very singy-ish. However, again, not being your atypical Muslim girl growing up, um, I listen to gospel music. Love it. Speaking of which, Hannah, where's my playlist? I love it. I love gospel music. I love, love going to a Baptist church and they're going in and they're singing and they're going. I love it. The music is just powerful. It's amazing. And I think it's something we can all relate to. However, and I just had this conversation with my mother the other day, the unfortunate part about Islam, for example, compared to Christianity, is that there's not a whole lot that I personally feel from my experience that kind of reels, especially young people in. And so music does that for a lot of people, where if you walk into a masjid on a Friday for prayer service, you're not going to hear drums. You're not going to hear the horns. You're not going to hear the piano. You're not going to hear people shouting and screaming. That's not what you're going to hear. Um, and I say that all churches do that, but specifically in the terms of like a Baptist church, right? So you're not going to hear that. And singing is amazing. And it does such amazing things for people. Just like you have gospel music, I wish there was something like that in Islam. And I know that in more recent times, people have, made songs and things like that. And it's kind of geared more towards children, but there are no hymns. Again, we're not going into the masjid and we're not singing. And I wish that were the case. And that's why I do listen to gospel music, because I think it's just beautiful and it's amazing. So yeah, I listen to my own music, whatever that might be, and I love to dance. But again, how I grew up is very different. And so, granted, I grew up Muslim. That's born and raised. That's what I grew up into. However, my parents, being very closely rooted and connected with the African culture, I grew up very different. Me and my siblings, very differently compared to a lot of other Muslims. And back in the 90s, specifically, my father, his wives, my mother, um, my siblings, a lot of us got a lot of slack for how we kind of was living through Islam, because we wore African print. Where now it's kind of like the style, it's the go-to thing for us. Like my mother, she sewed our clothes. That's what we wore on a daily basis. Um, we listened to music. We listened to African music. I did African dance my whole life, where a lot of Muslims were like, "Oh, you're dancing? You're not supposed to be dancing." Well, says who? I'm African. Like I'm an African American. I'm an African American Muslim, and so my father always wanted us to connect back to those roots. And so music has always been a major part of my life, whether it's African music, whether it's just those good old 80s music or the 70s, or the music that our parents listened to, that soulful music, whatever it is, it was always a part of my life. But I just wish personally, no different than maybe like in the church, that we sang and we had songs. But that's just not the case. So I love that question, because I've been dying to kind of get that out. But I listen to gospel music because unfortunately, there's no music like that being made in Islam, and that's what for me is really unfortunate. Um, so yeah, Hannah, I'm still waiting for my playlist. Thank you, ma'am.
I will send it as soon as this talk is over. I got you, Rue. But yes, I've always found it odd, especially with me being so musical. I can't imagine having a relationship with God and not being able to sing to him or sing about him. So I've always found it interesting that Muslims did not sing in the way that Christians did. And I always felt like, who's missing something? Like, and now that I'm older, I'm like, it's missing music. But again, because that is how I express my intimate moments with God. That's where I meet God, at the piano or in front of a mic. Um, it for me, it was a hard concept, even though when the scriptures are recited, it's sung or it has a melodic undertone to it. It always blew my mind. So I have a lot of Muslim friends who listen to gospel because that's what's missing, and so they end up going there. So it makes perfect sense. All right, Darnisha, Margot, and Elise. Go.
Yeah, so I'm with you, Hannah. Basically, everything that you said regarding singing, I mean, like just from one of our figures in our faith, also known as Ellen White. So she's considered as a prophet. So that's like, um, I want to say the way how a lot of Adventists view her is the Virgin Mary, but she's not. Uh, I know. I know it's like Darnisha Black Flag, but that's just my way of like kind of describing. But she's not in the Godhead. She's she's basically a mouthpiece. She's a spokesperson. So I didn't, yeah, because I'm gonna get some. I'm gonna get crucified by a couple of our peoples, but that's how people tend to
I got
view.
your back. It's okay. You good. I got
But
your
I'm
back.
going to subscribe it. So she has there's a book called Education, where she talks about music and she talks about like just the idea of education reform in schools, especially in Christian schools. And there's a quote that says, "Singing is an act of worship as it is prayer. If the child is taught to realize this, he or she will think more of the meaning of the words he or she sings and will be more susceptible to their power." So, as a children's pastor, when we do song service in our worships, especially in our education system, that's the first thing that our kids do is by singing. And yes, kids are singing for the sake of singing, but then when you get older, um, you start understanding these lyrics are actually prayers, or it's actually a way of encouraging oneself, having that build relationship, or even testifying. And I find it like for instance, like especially from the African American experience, gospel, that's our that's our bread and butter. The Negro spirituals, when African slaves were taken, from their home and being brought into a whole different mindset when they're being abused by scripture, um, being hurt in the name of scripture. And we can talk more about this, whenever, but what I love is that my ancestors were able to take those lemons and they made lemonade. They were able, when they started learning to read the Bible for themselves, even though it's a crime, and many of them lost a lot of stuff, like their hands, and might have been abused because they knew how to read. But they were able to use those songs like "Didn't My Lord Deliver Daniel?" Um, "Rocking My Soul in the Bosom of Abraham." uh, those kind of songs, "Go Down Moses." That was the code. That's what Harriet Tubman would use. Those were the ways of communicating with each other. And I think that's something that I love about the Black faith, is that we're able to sing those kind of songs to encourage each other, because we value community. So it's not just, okay, we're only singing this to God, but we're singing it to each other. And even those songs, like there were times when I went through my hardships here, with the George Floyd, that music came back to me. Like there's a group called Sounds of Blackness that's based in the Twin Cities here. And their songs, it just brings me back to that place of, okay, this is my way of me grounding myself, of me being secure in my identity, not just as a Black person, but as a believer of Christ. So, and also like, as far as dancing is concerned, yeah, we will get crucified. We don't do that. We don't do that. But what Hannah doesn't know is that my mom is West Indian. My mom was raised Adventist. My dad was raised Baptist. And the thing was, we were never told that we were Adventist until I got into fifth grade, sixth grade. That's when I understood, oh, there's a denomination called Adventist, and that's who we are. My parents never said, oh, we don't do that because we're Adventist. It's always we're Christian because we believe in God. And visiting my dad's side of the family, they had hymn lining. So hymn lining, we had those hymns, but then you drag the lines. And there were times I'm like, why are we singing like this? We's be free, like kind of thing. This is coming from a Southern Black person. But as I got older, when I started understanding the essence of hymnlining as a way of communicating and helping people who didn't know how to read, um, to be able to have that worship experience was something that really resonated with me even now. And especially my mom playing Sandy Patty, you know, those like in Gaither, and then we have Kirk Franklin and all that stuff. It was that way of us connecting. And for me, I dance. Whenever some dance, that's my way of me worshiping God. Is if I don't have the words to say, if words are not enough, I want to give my body, as a form of worship, and I'm going to dance and I'm going to express myself with my hands and my feet, and that's just where I am. I'm in a place of worship. So, but that's just basically, I can go like my sister Z could said, like, listen, Z, like, listen, I can go all night and talk about what worship, what music is to me, and that's just my way of me just like Richard Smallwood songs. Hold on, don't let go. Even though your heart hurts you so, he'll never let go of your hand. And that's that kind of way, like, okay, I'm singing this to myself, but I can sing this to somebody else, and they could be able to say, you know what, we're resilient. Let's hang on. Like, especially when times when we don't see God for ourselves, it's just, why not trust God again? Like, those kind of songs really resonate with me.
Who, girl, where's the offering plate? That right there was like music culture, that part, like music culture summed into one. Hymn lining, and I grew up with a dad who sang all the time. That's where I get like the incessant humming from. Um, However, my dad played the classics. So I had Mahalia Jackson, I had Marian Anderson, and then I had Elvis Presley, the gospel album, because most people did not know that Elvis Presley had a gospel album. right? This is what I grew up listening to. So I learned very quickly that there are different ways to honor God in music in different genres. So while gospel rap might not be my favorite genre, I completely understand the person coming in who this is their first encounter with Jesus and they won't be listening to Jay-Z and Nas their whole life. They're gonna come in and they're gonna want a little Jesus with their hood. Hey, give the people what the people need. If it builds their relationship with Jesus, because ultimately that's the point of music, at least for Christians. We build our relationship with God through music. All right, Margot and Elise, any comments?
Music just feels good. I mean, it tells a story, and whether it's my story or a story I've never heard, it's educational. I mean, it's cultural. It just feels good. There's really nothing more to me than that. It's how you connect with other people.
Absolutely. Elise?
I was just going to say that I second that it's bringing people together who probably might not normally be together. I think it resonates with people. There's a happiness, or it's maybe like bringing them back to a memory. Almost everybody who spoke about music was bringing it back to, oh, this is what I grew up with, or this is what my mom was playing. So I feel like for some people, maybe it's not always a happy memory, but for some, it's, a happy memory or brings you back to a place. Like, why do people like to smell certain things, or why do people like to eat certain things? Because it sounds silly, but it reminds them of like a moment in time or a person or a memory. In general, I'm a big music person, not so much from a religious standpoint, but I feel like I can understand whether I was at synagogue or whether I went to a church, because on a lot of trips I've gone to church, I've been to some services before, and I see how just like one song will get everybody connected and kind of having the same emitting the same feeling in people, and I think that's really powerful.
Music is definitely a universal language. So now we're going to get to the more relationship side. And we've been hinting at it throughout tonight's chat. It's a very consistent treating people, treating people with love and compassion, building relationship with people, right? One of the reasons why Zainab and I got so close is because outside of work, we built a relationship. We were actually coworkers. She was the bus monitor for the child I was assigned to in the classroom. And on a whim, I was just like, you know what? We need to have each other's numbers so that if he's having a rough morning on the bus, I am not walking to the bus with a with like total shock on my face. I know what I'm walking into. And if he had a rough day in school, I'm gonna let her know, hey, just so you know, he had a rough day in school. So she had a heads up. And from then, if we had to go to work and the school was shut down for whatever reason, or the buses weren't running that day, she would meet me and we would drive to work. We would laugh and joke outside of work. When she got married, I did her prayer for her wedding day. So we built a relationship outside of work to the point where she's my sister. And if someone tells me otherwise, they're going to get five knuckles on the face, because that's my sister. So there's this consistent theme of building relationship with people. And we often think of friendship, coworker, and this is actually Vidya's like lane. I am curious as to how your faith approaches marriage, romantic relationships, sex, relationships with your children, and everything in between. I know what Adventist Christians have to say about it, right? I know what 95% of Christians have to say about it, but I'm curious to see what other faiths, how they approach marriage, relationships, romantic relationships, same sex, opposite sex, poly, relationships with your children, right? What your children see, is what they normalize, and it's what they either may want based on what they see or may run in the complete opposite direction based on what they see. So I'm curious, how has your faith shaped your relationship building skills, marriage, romantic relationships, sex, because that's a big ticket item. We all got parts, and our parts are pretty functional. So, go.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah, for asking that question. Actually, it's a very good question. The thing is, in Vaishnavism, in Sanatan Dharma, what we follow is a man accepts a wife in service of, and a wife also accepts a man in service of Lord. So it's not one over the other. The roles, gender roles might be different. But the thing is, it's not that superior or she is superior or she is inferior. It's a myth that many people think it's perceived in that way. Everybody, the physiological body is different, so the psychographics are different. So based on that, everybody's role is defined accordingly. So when they accept each other in the service of Lord, the exploitation doesn't happen, that you do this for me or you do this is what I want from you. So relationship is about giving rather looking at it as like what is it for me. If we keep on looking at it as what is in it for me, then that is the time we have to realize that relationship is going down south, because then you're only thinking about your own expectations, your own sense gratification, your own thing to be matched, and you're change the other person. So what can I give in the relationship? That is the main agenda. And in a family as a unit, as you asked, what is the relationship with the children, how is the relationship with the in-laws, or how is the relationship with your husband or wife, and all the relatives are around. And then what is your relationship with your friends? All friends, there's a social around the you're connected with totally. So entire these things come together if every around a single agenda. If my agenda is different, then my other partner's agenda is different, children's agenda is different, in-laws agenda. So everybody's thoughts will be circled around their own agendas, and then there will be clashes. So what Sanatan Dharma teaches, what Bhagavad Gita says, that a family who prays together stays together. So according you have to connect all this, then I would say Srila Prabhupada used to say, if your everybody's agenda in the family is to serve the Supreme Lord Krishna, and if everybody is going to pray to him, then their thoughts will be circled around the same agenda. Okay, whatever we are doing is we are doing for him. So there are some small conflicts in the family. Oh, why did you cook this? This is not my favorite. I need something else. So everybody has their own tastes and these things. But if the food is cooked for Lord, everybody is like, oh, we are honoring a prasad. Prasad is something that is given back from the Lord to us to eat. So everybody will be in sync, thinking that, oh, this is something that we have offered. So everybody is eating the same. Then those small details in which the conflicts happen, they are overcome. This is just an example I'm giving. There are major big things that are also the families. This is one snippet that I gave. How it functions to function if everybody is serving the Lord, is believing the God, serving Lord, then at the everybody's thoughts is thought it. And when it comes relationship with children are treated as if they are the blessings of the Lord, and it is our duty, it's the parent's duty to take him back to Godhead, take him back, God, connect God, because when a child is the child really doesn't the child gets according to the environment that's put in. Like in my case, if you see, I was born in this family where my father is man and my mom is a homemaker. I was brought up in that career is very important, earning money is very important, stand on your feet, be independent. So that ambition was hated in me in a very hardcore, and we saw a little bit of conflicts in the families to go back into towards the spirituality. I am soulless in the spirit. So as I grew up, I realized that spirituality connects you. It does connect you at all. It is about connecting the entire family together. It's not like one person is going this way, person is having a different thought. So the relationship between children and parents done with the help of spirituality, when you follow a same path, and family functions as a unit. And in case romantic relationship, sex, Bhagavad Gita says that the dharma is a man and woman come together to procreate and birth to a children which are to the society in general. When the relationship is it, and if they have the blessings of entire society, family, then when the children are born, they are then an environment where there are loving exchange in the people. There are no conflicts, and they are not brought up uh, uh, an environment which would provoke them to do some kind of violence. So when such kind of unitedness happens between women, then the procreation that happens is also of love and compassion. They experience love, they out love. So this is what the Sanatan Dharma teaches. So this is what I would like to say. Yeah.
One of the things you said that made me go was when you said Hinduism encourages your career, right? Which is a question that I was going to ask, but I don't think I'm going to. Um, Oftentimes we see this idea of the woman as so subservient to the man that she loses her identity. And
Yeah.
it almost would appear that religion supports that. When in reality, if I serve a God that wants me to have a relationship with him, and scriptures say I am to love my neighbor as myself, and in order for me to know what love is, I have to love God. Why would I want, if I'm a man, why would I want my wife not to have an identity? Why does my wife's value and identity have to be so linked to mine that how she's even addressed is dependent on whether she's married or not? Right? A man is a man. His title is always Mr. But with a woman, you go from MISS until you become a mature woman, then you're MS. Then you become a married woman, you're MRS. And then if you are a divorcee or if you are a widow, you can either keep MRS or you return back to MS. But our title always changes as it relates to MS. So I find it very interesting and refreshing that the tenets of Hinduism, or how Hinduism relates to marriage and children, is one of harmony and one of love, but most importantly, one of respect.
Yeah.
I really, really like that. I think that's very interesting.
I would like to add to this that when I met my spiritual master, I was a very ambitious woman. As I told, I was brought up in a very ambitious family. So when I met my spiritual master, I was of the opinion that I'll be all about my career and focus, and I would not go for children so early or after marriage and all those things. Entire modern thinking. And when I met him, my spiritual master was so specific. His Holiness Mahavishnu Maharaj, his teachings, his instructions are so specific that yes, if you have taken up a role as a married woman, then you better give your A game towards that role. So I went through, whenever we get married, there are so many changes in our life happen. Like we say, move from one place to another. Sometimes women tend to shift their place with husbands to different locations. So when he came into life, I realized that my approach towards the family had become very positive. No matter what happened, his main instruction was no counteraction is the best counteraction. So, no matter how many oceans waves are coming, if we behave like a rock, then they just surpass over the period of time. They go back. And this, I really applied this formula in my life, seeing how I got connected with every single person in the family that I got into. And realized that yes, this is the formula. This is how the family stay together. This can be like 9 plus 2 has to be equal to 11. So if one person is going, his anger is going to get 9, the other person comes to 2, then the equation is always 11. Maybe another person might come to 9, then we can come to 2, and then the addition always be going to be 11. I think you're right with what I'm telling. So this is how the families can really stick together. His instruction was children are supposed to respect the elders, whatever they are being told. They should respect and obey the elders, because the elders or parents have the best intention in their head for their children. Their awareness might vary, their exposure of the world might vary as and when the children grow up. But no matter what the wisdom that the parents have, that cannot be matched by children at any level. And so children are supposed to respect parents, and then parents are supposed to take the emotional and spiritual care of children till the end of their own life. So these were his instructions: to do all your materialistic duties properly, perfectly, while remembering Krishna. I said Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, hearing, chanting, and remembering. So do all this perfectly, and this is how keep the together. If family is together, then he will be any. So harmony will be there. So what his primary instruction, how my career path also got graphed according to his instructions. So this is how.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
appreciate your perspective and your faith's view on marriage and relationships. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else want to chime in?
Um, love this question. Oh my God, it brings me such joy to be able to answer it, or share. So I'll try to keep it brief, so other people can chime in if necessary. So I'll speak quickly from 3 different kind of perspectives: my own personal perspective and experience, the religious or spiritual part of it, and then the cultural part of it, which is all be interconnected. Um, so in Islam, the way marriage is viewed, just kind of sum it up in short, is that it's basically the building block of life, right? And marriage in Islam is half of your deen, or it's half of your religion. And so when you get married, you have fulfilled half of your religion, half of your deen. And probably like maybe most religious or religious backgrounds, God, he smiles upon marriage and he frowns upon divorce. Though it is understood why people have to get divorced at times. But marriage and families, that's a big part of your faith, right? Um, and the way it is done is it's very interesting. There are a lot of Muslims who do go down and they go down to the courthouse and they get that document signed. But there are a lot of Muslims who just have that nikah or their marriage, that contract between, and it's done in a spiritual. You have a spiritual marriage, and so it's you and imam and maybe your witnesses, and you come up with your contract. The woman is presented with her dowry or her gift, and then they agree upon it. It gets signed off on, and then they're married. Um, Me, however, I did go the spiritual route that Hannah mentioned a while back. Um, Never again. I do believe in getting that paper signed on the dotted line through New York State for lots of different reasons. And a lot of that has to do with security. I mean, don't get me wrong, being spiritually married is amazing and it's wonderful and, it's great. You know, However, life is real, and I want more security than a piece of paper that someone can take and just rip up and it doesn't exist. Um, but yes, in terms of marriage, it's really important in Islam. Speaking from even just a cultural perspective, it's about building communities. And so you're taking one tribe and you're matching it with another tribe and you're building this even bigger tribe. Um, and that should be the purpose of marriage. We're building nations and we're building tribes and we're building our community and we're making it bigger and making it stronger. Um, so a lot of times when people think of Islam, they think of like polygamy, and that becomes like the highlight of like marriage, right? And I was trying not to go there. I really was trying not to go there, but a lot of times that's what Islam is associated with. But in a lot of religious groups, people have practiced polygamy, right? And there are a lot of misconceptions around polygamy, which I won't get into all of that. Maybe I'll say that for the later part, if we have time. But yes, I mean, in Islam, marriage is definitely half of your deen or half of your religion. From that cultural standpoint, it's about building nations and bringing families and tribes together. Marriage is amazing and it's beautiful and it's wonderful. But I think if I have to go that route again, no, we're not going to the masjid and signing a piece of paper. No, New York State need to recognize that I'm your wife. So God forbid anything was to happen, I have some security around here, and that's just my viewpoints on that. Um, and in terms of like family, obviously, family is your foundation, it's your rock, right? And it's the rock of not only just your family, but just in society, human society. And I had to write it down. So the prophet, right? And there were many prophets. But the last one that Muslims acknowledge is Prophet Muhammad. And what he said specifically about family is that do not ever sever your relationship with a member of your family, even if he severs his relationship with you. And it's tough in today's society. People have this attitude, this energy of like, I don't need you, brother, sister, cousin, mother, father. I'll cut you off, and I don't, I don't need to have nothing to do with you. And for me, even though my family can get on my nerves, and sometimes I'm ready to just be like, I'm done, that I always keep at the forefront of my mind, because family is everything. And whether it's you built your family from within your community or they're your blood relatives, family, I'm just rooted in family. So Hannah's my family. I'm rooted in family, and I just, it's hard for me to kind of cut that off. But yeah, I'm gonna try to stay away from the polygamy part unless people got questions about it or we have it to the end. But I got a whole lot to say about that one, my dear. But by the way, I did grow up in polygamy, and so that's another can of worms. It's 19 brothers and sisters. It's a lot happening here. So I'm definitely rooted in family because it's a lot of us.
That polygamy. I was actually one of the other panelists that I was trying to get, but she wasn't able to because of scheduling conflict, was a Black Israelite or a Hebrew, because they are the other groups of people that uh, subscribe to polygamy, one coming from a Muslim glasses, um, and one coming from the more Christianity glasses. So that was a question that I was definitely going to ask. However, I'll save it for a part two, maybe, because that is something that needs its own time to kind of delve into, how polygamy works. How do you handle jealousy? Because I'm very selfish and there's certain things I'm not sharing. And my man and his member is probably the number one thing that I'm not going to share. However, I know people who do it and they love it for the security. They love it for the family. It's my child vomited, and so the sister mom is going to clean up the vomit. Another sister mom is going to change the child, and I get to just have a moment to breathe. Or I'm going into labor, and I don't have to look for a babysitter. I have three sister moms who we've done life together for so long. I don't have to tell them that child one does not like peas with their peppers, but child two does. They already know it, right? So I've heard the benefits, my flesh is like, no, ma'am, not in this camp. But that is definitely something for a later chat. We'll probably bring back When Faith Meets Life Part 2, or Religions and Relationship. Ooh, we can do that. Religion and relationship, and talk about marriage and friendship and all of that good jazz. Okay, Elise.
When you do that, you should bring up polyandry, because reading up on it is absolutely fascinating. Like learning the cultural of why things happen the way they did. Why did one woman take multiple husbands? It's absolutely amazing to learn about. Just a little plug.
Yes, we might bring back religion and relationship, and we'll focus on the interpersonal relationships with others, friendships, coworkers, marriage, polygamy, polyandry, past relationship. That'll be a part two. Okay, Margot, Darnisha, and Elise, and then I'll ask one more question and then take questions from the amazing humans that are still sticking around after almost 2 hours. So, what is your faith's approach to marriage, relationship, sex, and everything in between?
So for me, marriage is it's a partnership. It's a team. And so when my husband and I decided we want to be together forever, it was because we worked really well together. We emotionally connected, we physically connected, we have similar life goals, and we really saw our lives going down similar paths for hopefully forever. But some people have touched on divorce. If it happens, it does. It's sad and it's unfortunate, and I think oftentimes unpredictable. That being said, I've watched many people get married and I knew it was going to end in divorce. I've also watched many people that I thought would and didn't. So I believe in divorce. I believe in marriage as teamwork. In terms of premarital sex, I think physical intimacy is very important in a relationship. It's not the only thing. Obviously, I actually almost think emotional is more important. I also, I'm pretty sure my parents would have liked if I waited longer. I'm pretty sure his parents would too, but we're the only ones in the team, so that's the only two that mattered for us. And then in terms of kids, I'm not going to comment on, because we are child-free by choice, and I don't think I am qualified to answer that, because I just don't have a perspective.
I beg to differ. At one point, you were a child and you were parented by someone.
I have cats. and my cats are a lot of work.
Fair enough.
I am not qualified.
Okay. That was cute. She's like, I'm a cat mom. Okay, Elise and Darnisha.
So in terms of relationships, so I was brought up in a household, mom and dad married, still married. And I think I was definitely raised in a household where you finish school or you meet somebody and then you get married. I mean, education was first. That's another thing I didn't bring up because I don't think that was directly asked. But I feel like if you know anyone who's Jewish, the parents made sure the kids are going to school, and college was definitely, that's one thing. I mean, probably not for ultra religious people. I'm sure ultra Orthodox do not have that same view just because their goals in life are different. But for Jewish people all across the board, going to school is primary before anything else. My parents wouldn't care if I had a kid first. It's you go to school. That's how it was in my family. In terms of relationships, I mean, I will say I have operated very differently than my parents. I'm sure I also date outside of my religion. I don't know if my parents would have been open to that. Or I don't even think maybe they would have exposed themselves. One of the things that I'm sure Hannah can attest to is that I always love, I'm an advocate for diversity. I'm from Queens. I've always, even though I'm white and Jewish and I'm not the most diverse person myself, I think I've just become so diverse, not only because of my personality, but because which you guys won't really know right now, but Hannah knows. And just because of who I've surrounded myself with and where I go, I've traveled a lot. I've spent time with different people. I've done a lot of volunteering. I've just kind of tried to, similar to someone said earlier, really learn about other religions. I like to learn about other cultures. That's way more interesting than hanging out with people who are like me. That's not going to do anything for me. In terms of, so relationship wise, I definitely am different in my parents in the sense that I think I'm more open to date. I would date somebody outside of my religion for sure. Marry, I know that would probably be complicated, and you guys could do a whole discussion, whole conversation on that, but I'd be open to it. I think I like the idea of blending religions. Like there's certain traditions that I remember, like, I celebrate Yom Kippur, I have to fast that day. It's been important to my mom, so I do that. Or like celebrating Passover and you have like a plate with different types of food on it. Like that would be cool if I had a kid to like explain that. I would need to have what is it called? A session where I reteach myself because I could not educate you guys on that at the moment. But in terms of the way I am similar to my parents would be in terms of I do want to be in a monogamous relationship, whether I'm married or not. That's important to me. I will say that the one thing, and I don't think this has to do with him or my mom being Jewish, is that my parents were, from day one, my parents put other people, and i.e. me, before themselves. I'm not only saying that because, it's my parents, but my parents really put other people before them. Probably not always the best case scenario, but they've always instilled that in me of like, it's not all about you. Mind you, I'm an only child. My parents humbled me real quick. And so I always joke about it, but it's true. I will say that one of the things that I don't know if this is a religious thing or not, because the few Jewish friends that I do have, their parents are great, but I don't know if it's the same like mentality that they have. My parents were always very much as successful as they have been, very humble and it's not just about us. It's about, what can I do for somebody else? Or, okay, can you help someone else? And to do a good job and do good by people, even if they don't do good back to you. And so I think that that's something that I try really hard to, especially as I'm getting older, to practice in my life, with my friendships, with my relationships. And it's we're in a tough world, a tough time, but I still try to do that. Although I am getting better at making it a little bit about me, because once in a while I think it can be about me. But aside from that, I think that's my stance on relationships and how I view other people and how I try to treat people in my life.
Thank you for sharing that, Elise. Darnisha, and I don't remember if Cheyenne chimed in or not. If you did, it's okay. If not, I would love for you to chime. Nope. Okay. Darnisha, I would love to hear your perspective and your thoughts.
All right. Well, it's funny because I'm looking at someone else's. Well, I'm looking at the questions that we're getting, and I know question about, is a single person not considered capable of getting close to God? So,
that was in response to Zainab.
Oh, Zainab.
So the timing that was posted, and I am going to bring that question back. Right. When she had mentioned that for the Islam faith, half of your you can correct the way I phrase it if I misphrase it, but half of the journey, or half of the importance is getting married. So her question is, what if you don't get married? Have you been an unfulfilled Muslim? That's the angle that she's coming from. So I'll definitely bring it back because I do want to hear that answer. But yes, sorry, just wanted to clarify that.
Well, I'll hold off that response because I feel like Zainab, the question is raised is a single person, a single Christian, are they considered to be unfulfilled if they're not married? So I'm gonna come back to it. But as far as marriage, in our faith, is marriage between one man and one woman, and basically it's the idea of that the said marriage is considered as the most ultimate representation of God from just from that experience, because the idea when God created Adam, and of course he went off to say, it's not lawful for a man to be alone. So he decided he's going to make him a helpmate. So the helpmate, which was Eve, and basically those two put together are known as, they're basically the image of God. So because the men, there's certain traits that men have that reflects God, and there's certain traits that women have that reflects God. So when you bring those two together, it's like that union. The two become one flesh. So this is not to say that we're half a person, and I'll elaborate more about it with that said question. But yeah, so the idea afterwards, then children come about. Children are a good inheritance of God. God says, "Be fruitful and multiply," and so is that whole idea. And I really love what Vidya. Am I saying that right? So Vidya mentioned something about, like, with children, about how they're supposed to be raised in a certain environment, in a healthy environment, and that's our approach in Christianity is the idea of, I know in our culture, in the Adventist church, we have, and even actually not just Adventists, like Baptists do the same thing. In the Christian faith, they do a child dedication where they is a representation of giving their child back to God. So it's the idea that these kids are not our own kids; these are God's kids, and we are only their stewards. So it's through God's help that we are called to raise these kids in what's considered to be the fear and admonition of God. So not like allowing kids to see God as a fear mongering God, but God as a loving God. And that's when I was raised. Both my parents, like my mom was, again, born and raised Adventist, and then she married my dad, who was Baptist at the time, and then my dad became Adventist. And just seeing those two dynamics, there wasn't no strain because we all went to church on Sabbaths, on Saturdays. We've done, we do charity work. We serve those in need, and so we give our tithe, return our tithe and offering. And I think there's a part that was in my brain, and I thought about it, and it's not coming out how I want it. But I guess just the idea of children, that relationship. Oh, here's the thing. So the caveat in the Christian faith is they're not much people are excited about dating outside the religion. So it will be tricky for a Christian to marry a Muslim, marry an atheist, marry a Hindu, marry a Jew. And I think the struggle, the hard part about it, it's like, oh, well, we need, it's the idea of, there's a scripture where it says, do not be unequally yoked with a believer and an unbeliever. So that's where that comes from. And the idea of it was basically, like, I remember my parents my mom was talking about it. It's like, if I were to marry someone outside of my faith, and then when we have kids, it's going to be much trickier, because you have to decide on the practices of how you want to raise your child. So if you are a plant-based Adventist, the question is going to be raised: are we going to raise our child to be vegetarian? Are we going to have them eat meat, even if mom doesn't eat meat? The idea of, if they go, like, as far as worships, do we take the child to the church, or do we take them to the mosque, or take them to the synagogue, or take them to the temple? So it's that, or if we don't send our kids to church at all. So that's like the whole tricky tricky thing that a lot of people have. But I mean, nowadays, people are more open to whomever they're with and of whatnot. But at the same time, also with relationships, I think that we all have to have that balance that um, we're here for each other. Like, again, no man's an island, so we need each other. And as far as, I don't know, should we talk about gender roles or should we push that off to another time? So yeah, and then of course the gender roles is another tricky thing too, because you have people believing this idea of the male headship theology, thinking of and I think it goes like the idea of the order of men. Man was created first, then there's a woman. So from that experience, then it's like, okay, sin happened in the Garden of Eden, trouble in paradise. So that means the woman has to go through pains in childbirth. Because people consider that's the will of God. I don't believe that's the will of God. That was a curse from the result of what happened in the Garden of Eden. And both Adam and Eve were both held responsible. And some people don't say it's Eve. Eve was the one who tempted Adam. But again, when we go back to the Garden of Eden, is people are called to be, we're one person. We're not depending on another person. And for me, I don't depend on my identity on whom I married, and that's what many I want to say dark age, but I guess Christian theologians in the past, like St. Augustine, had this idea that a woman is inferior to the image of God. That's not the case. That's completely erroneous. That's completely blasphemy. And they mentioned that in order for a woman to be, for her to have the sense of identity, it's based on whom she's married to. And that is not accurate. So as far as that, like, yes, there are gender roles, but those roles are not absolute. Like my mom growing up, my mom was the primary breadwinner in our household. She's a nurse, she's an RN. My dad worked from home and he was with us more. So it's not like, okay, my dad's responsibility is to be out the house and to do this, and my mom has to be stuck with 3 kids. No, that's not the case. But there's that idea of communication, that connection. And I love how Lydia, just that approach is just similar to just how my parents were, just being able to communicate and say, hey, who's responsible of this? Who's responsible of that? So it's a mutual connection. And I know in certain scriptures, well, in Paul's writings in the New Testament, there's that talk of women should be submissive to husbands. Yeah, I get that. But there's a mutual submission. Because when you read a few verses ahead, Paul is calling both man and woman to submit to each other. But that's the thing that many Christians, they're guilty of. They pick out stuff and make things sound good. So when we have children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right, honoring your mother and your father so that your days will be long. But we don't read the part where it says, fathers, do not provoke your children.
That was always a verse that I would tell my parents, where they would say, honor your father and your mother. And I'm like, yes, don't make me angry. Don't provoke me to anger. And tell me that I'm still to respect you, right? Because honor does not mean obey. Honor means respect. So the word says, respect my parents so that I can live long. What you cannot do is provoke me to anger, expect me to respect you, and then get upset when I treat you like a heathen because you acting like a heathen. And if obedience was a commandment from God to the parent, to us, then there would not be a clause in the scripture that also says, obey your parents in the Lord. Because God understands that while a parent might have a preference for their child, this might not be what God wants. If left up to my dad, I would have been an Adventist wife of a pastor somewhere, being somebody's nursemaid, and I would be the worst nurse. I promise you, I'd be the worst nurse inside of heaven because I have no desire to figure out medicine. Give me a history textbook and I'm in a happy place. So if I'm to obey my parents, I would be unhappy. If I'm to obey God, my parents have to honor my decision to obey God. So I'm so glad you brought that up, which we'll definitely have to go into detail for like part two, but definitely understanding that I'm to respect you, but don't make me angry and then still expect me to treat you the way that I should because now you broke that clause.
Yes.
Yep, yep, yep. Okay. Cheyenne, did you want to chime in?
Yes, really quickly. So, I mean, because coming from having some kind of Christian background and me being agnostic, I actually found Anisha's point actually quite interesting as having a believer versus, a non-believer with a non-believer. So, me kind of being the product of one who practiced Christianity more devout in her early parts of her life and my dad who didn't, they actually both agreed on this whole notion of allow it to be a choice. So you have where some people where it's forced, where you, if this is the faith that both parents have, or if one of them has, that's what it is. So I can say that my sister and I were actually very fortunate to have that choice. So for the reason why I have my knowledge of Christianity is because I was curious. I would see my mom reading the Bible or her doing like the little mini Bible studies or her going to church. And I would just say like, like a curious child will ask questions. So it's like, hey, mommy, like, what are you doing? Or what are you reading? So our conversations in the beginning of my understanding Christianity began from me asking questions, being a curious child that I was. And the thing was, I'm grateful that they both agreed to allow this to be a choice because it gave me more openness on the idea of, okay, I can talk to you. I can ask these questions. Or, hey, are you like for example, my mom would say, hey, do you want to go to church? I'm gonna go on Sunday. Do you wish to go? There were times I said yes. There were times I said no. Both times it was honored and basically regarded as okay. She wants to go because this is, I guess, our bonding time or just her wanting to connect. Or no, he's not interested. So with that type of experience, because I know it's different from other people, because I do know of people who have been in relationships with people who were out of their faith and it's ended catastrophic. And when I mean catastrophic, I mean it was tragic. I can actually say it was more of a tragedy watching the results unfold. But as a child, knowing and being as open minded as I have been, I actually do appreciate the fact that now that I'm older, that openness, that ability to be able to give me that kind of that gray area early on gives me that openness and willingness to want to delve into other belief systems if I choose to. If I choose to be Christian, I can go and choose to be Christian because I have the knowledge. I know what it takes to take the next steps. But if I choose not to, I know that it is my choice. And that is what basically the higher power would appreciate, regardless of what my choices are. So that's just the point that I wanted to make.
Thank you. I have seen opposite um, faiths come together and utterly destroyed. And then I've also seen opposite faiths come together and it's a beautiful union. My aunt is a Pentecostal Christian. My uncle is a whole Jew. His last name is Silverstein. Um, so I grew up lighting candles on Friday night for Sabbath when I was at their house, and then my mom having family worship, right? Because my mom is still very Adventist, a whole practicing Adventist. My parents had this notion of, I am sitting on the couch and I'm going to sing a hymn, and your tail better be on this couch before I get to the chorus. Like this. So I learned very quickly how to lead because if I spent a few extra moments in my bed, the punishment, which now that I'm older, I see it as my dad's very clever way of training and grooming me to be a leader. I was responsible for family worship. So I had to pick the songs, I had to pick the scriptures, and then I had to teach it. It wasn't an option. So my sister had a turn. I had a turn. Margot, if you came into my house, maybe you would have a turn because it was my dad's way of teaching us if you believe this thing, you better know why. And it's not going to be because I spoon fed it to you. It's going to be because you spent time with this book, so you know what you believe. So I can sit on a panel of different views and my view not be swayed. Like at the end of the day, I'm still Team Jesus. That's not going to change. What will change is how I interact with a Hindu from now forward, because this is my first time ever having a conversation with a Hindu. Right? Previously, I've never been able to. I've never had the luxury to. So that's what's going to change my interaction, not my faith, because I'm grounded that came from my childhood. Um, I had to lead family worship, and we were on a rotation. My dad had the first week, my mom had the second week, I had the third week, my sister had the fourth week, rinse and repeat. So I grew up very grounded. And I'm very grateful for it. And I was gonna ask my last question. I'm not going to, because there are um questions um from the panel. So let's go to the first one. And thank you guys for hanging out so late. I really appreciate you. So this one comes from Remy Stars. Um, and it was, hi. So as believers, as the body, this is gonna be a good one. As the body of believers, we believe in the supernatural. So I believe that if Margot comes to me with a headache, and I've done this before, like I've done this, so I'm not speaking from a theological perspective, right? We know what the Bible says. I'm also speaking from I've physically done this. If Margot has a headache, I will put my hand. Not, I'm at this point. I'm not even asking. I'm gonna put my hand on her head and say, "In Jesus' name, your headache has to go. Sickness has no place in your body, and the headache will leave." I'm not asking you. I'm telling you because I've done it, right? If you have back pain, I will put my hand on your back and say, your spine will correct. Your discs will move back into place and it will stay there. Whatever was shifted in your car accident will shift back, right? Your spine will be aligned. You will be able to bend over the way that you did prior to your accident, and your spine will do what I told it to do. Why? Because this isn't Hannah speaking, this is Jesus operating through Hannah, right? We also believe in the prophetic. So I can have a conversation with someone. And again, this is something that I've done. I cannot speak from just theology. I can speak from what I have done, which now makes me the unorthodox Adventist, right? I remember praying for someone, and I'm what you would call a prophetic intercessor, right? So I'll start to pray for you, and I won't know what to pray for until the Holy Spirit says, stay there. And I'm not shifting from whatever that is. So I prayed for someone, and I don't know why God showed me her stomach. So I can either see it or I'll hear it. We call those seers and hearers. And I saw like her stomach. I just didn't know what was going on in it. And then I heard, pray for her stomach. Uh, my guy comes probably about maybe 10 or 15 minutes right afterwards and walks up to her and goes, you have stomach ulcers. And I ran out because I was like, I know what I heard. I know what I heard. So we call that the prophetic, right? The ability to know something in someone's life based on our higher power giving us that information. Um, word of knowledge is the past and the present. Word of wisdom is the future. So word of knowledge would be, there's a diary in your home with flowers on it. If I've never been in your home, I would never know that. That's the Holy Spirit giving me that information, right? Whereas for word of wisdom is, in 6 months this is going to happen. I'm also a dreamer, so I get my word of wisdom in dreams. So I'll go to sleep, I will get a dream, and then in 3 months, the dream will come to pass exactly how I dreamt it. Not a stitch out of place, not a fabric out of place. If I dream that Darnicha, this is not a prophetic moment. If I dream that in 6 months, Darnicha is going to pastor a church, I might see her in the pulpit addressed as the lead pastor for this church. I may or may not say anything if I'm not given permission to speak on it. But then in 6 months, if she is standing in a church with the same dress that I saw in the dream, and she's now being announced as the lead pastor for the XYZ Seventh Adventist Church, now my real life has confirmed what I saw in a dream. We call that the prophetic and the miracles. This is very common in the Christian faith, right? Different Christian faiths express this differently. but it's common to see this amongst Christians. I'm very curious as to how the Hindu faith approaches the prophetic and miracles, the Jewish faith approaches prophetic and miracles, the Islam faith approaching prophetic and miracles, and what that looks like in the context of an agnostic and an atheist. Go, Cheyenne.
So before I go, so I'm gonna take a quiet bow out, but just I'm gonna make my last point before I go, kind of going along the prophetic and just off of the whole thing with dreams. So I've been getting more of those type of kind of like dreams of where even if it's people of the departed, so people who've passed on have even left, kind of like messages, I guess you could say. So the strangest one for me was having a dream of someone I've never met, and it was my great grandmother. So this is someone that I've never met, and my mom was too young to remember her. So, mind you, never seen a picture of her in my life. But when I was under a lot of distress, and a lot of it was just, psychological. And basically, as this woman is talking to me, mind you, I'm it's as if it's as normal as it can be. And the conversation was, she said, I look at your eyes and I can tell you've gone through a lot in your life. What I want you to do is to be patient and be even more patient than you've ever been. So sometimes, depending on how people view those type of dreams, it could be ominous based off of the people whom are in the dream, or it could mean something else. So long story short, when I spoke to my mom about it, she's seen a picture of her grandmother. She broke down crying and said, "You literally described your great grandmother to a T, from beginning to end, from the facial structure to the complexion of her skin to her voice and figure. You explained everything." And she said, "You know what? Maybe this is just a sign, and this is basically her and basically the higher power trying to give you some type of wisdom in order for you to stick around longer, or to be more patient, because your patience has been thinner within the last year." I find those type of prophetic as well as kind of like the miracle kind of situation very, it's interesting because it makes me question some of my beliefs, but then it kind of keeps me on that spiritual aspect, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's what kind of came to mind when I was listening to you speak, Hannah.
Well,
You can go, Vidya.
yeah. So in our Sanatan Dharma, if you see, there are many stories about miracles. You know that like a 5 year old has 5 year girl has been saved by Lord when she was about front of. Or then there are stories where a ghost away by chanting of Krishna's name, or just by reading Bhagavatam scripture and ghost went away. So there are many miracles. Well, what has in his personal sin, I remember when I was 2 years old, doctors have given up the hope of the. They had told my parents that we don't have yet this child will live. Then my parents just took me to the temple, that is to give up the body, that the child with the body in temple. Suddenly I got up and I started walking. So miracle for my parents. As far as I am concerned, I really feel that in Krishna consciousness, we do not look for miracles to see that whether God, it is an entry point spirituality to see whether God exists or not, to seek for the miracles in Bhagavad Gita, as it is mentioned that there are four types of who approach. Some people approach through free fear. Some people approach stressful. Some people approach towards the Lord because they want some financial abundance in their life, or they are seeking. And the fourth type of people who approach are the seekers of spiritual truth. So when the fearful person becomes fearless, for him it is the realization of God. When a person with lack finds money, then for him that is a miracle. that he found money when he started approaching the Lord for some stressful. It can be a body related, can be any other stress in his life, an unhealthy body or unhealthy relation. So when he comes out of that tackle for him, when the one who is seeking for spiritual truth, when he finally finds his spiritual own path according to his calling, then he calls it a miracle. So we don't seek for miracle. It's, yes, it is an entry point. Obviously, some people might get it spirituality with some kind of agenda in their head. Otherwise, the main reason behind all these miracles is just to on proving ourselves whether Lord is there or not. How, oh, this happened to me, that happened to me. See, Lord is there. See, Lord is there. Now, when you reach at a stage where you already believe, where you already know that He is there, Krishna, He is present in every living entity. He is around. There are all living entities, all kinds of trees, plants, birds, animals, all kinds of species, and He is there everywhere. You can experience Him everywhere. There doesn't come a question of miracles. A baby being the womb, baby. If the baby is growing in the womb, there is nothing externally that any person is doing, doctors or scientists. They are not going inside and growing the baby inside the womb. The child, yes, there might be certain scenarios where the child needs certain help, and that way science can intervene. However, that itself is a miracle. So the miracles are all around that are happening. It's up to us whether we are separate for a continuous approve whether the supreme exists or exists. So in my case, I don't look for miracles anymore. And even if they happen, it's like, there's a story where a man said that was, look, walk on this river. I can walk on this water and go to the another shore, another bank of this river. So then there was Srila Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the spiritual master of Srila Prabhu, founder of Society of Krishna Consciousness. He said, oh, you can water. I can give this 2 pasties and to the boatman, and he can take me in the boat to the next bank of the river. So for him, the miracle was that. So, okay. There's no need to look out miracles. Seek the Lord, and even if it's okay, initially it's fine. Later on, you really for it. Then, if they happen, they add on to your realization and your love towards the super.
Hmm. So if somebody were to perform, and I use the word perform loosely, if you were to bear witness a miracle, it would have no effect per se. Did I understand that
It
correctly?
will have, obviously. If my child is sick, I will pray to the Lord. I'll definitely Lord. And if my child recovers, then I'll have a deep sense of gratitude towards the Lord. My devotion towards Him will definitely increase. That's not something I would look forward to. That's not that only benchmark that I would look forward to start loving Him. I'll keep on serving Him and loving Him the way I do on daily basis. And when there are certain trying circumstances that I'll them, and when the end solved, my gratitude would increase. My devotion would increase towards. So it is infinite. It's like the Lord is infinite. So the levels at what we can love Him, they are all infinite. It goes on increasing. There's no limit to it. I cannot say that I cannot pinpoint at this point. Oh, this is the point that I've reached and I love Him at this point. No, it will go on increasing and increasing and increasing day by day. There's no limit.
Hmm. I have a follow-up question to ask, but we are out of time. So we'll table that for like another discussion. But I'd like to hear everyone else's response. So the Muslim response, remember that even though Darnisha and I come from a very similar background, our approach to the miraculous and the prophetic may be very different. It's one thing to read about something and another to actually experience it. Like I've had a prophet tell me who my ex's names were and he would never met me. That was like they begin with the letter J. This is what, and my jaw dropped because that's not something you would have ever known. So my experience might be very different than Darnisha. So I'm still very, very interested to hear um, Margot's, Darnisha, Elise, and Zainab's response, and then we'll call it a wrap after this.
All right. I'll have to do a quick. I'll say my 2 cents real quick because I gotta jump on to another meeting. But I know my approach to the prophetic and or miracles. I do believe in miracles, and of course, we think about the miracle birth. I know my sister Zay mentioned, just that experience of seeing life happening, and so that's one. Miracles, I think about just those who have been sick, those that were given a timeline when they will pass, and some of them exceeded that timeline. Others survived, and they're living to tell the story. That's another example of a miracle. I know my line of work. Last year, I had like 2 kids, like that was going through certain situations. So one of my kiddos was battling cancer, and she just turned 3, so she was battling cancer from age 1, age 2, and yes, she had to lose. She had to go through some amputation, but she's in remission. So that's like, wow, this is a God thing. I'm also thinking about one of my other kids that was in a bad car accident. His older brother and father passed, but then this one was fighting for his life, and the doctors were trying to expedite his death, and the mom was like, "No, I'm not doing this like until God says it's done." So of course we all gathered around as a faith community. We prayed over this kid, and by God's grace, he pulled through. He's home. There were certain things that they were expecting him to, like he would not move his hands. He's moving his hands. He's not able to see people, or like they thought that he would lose his sight, and now his sight is restored. Um, he's talking. So it's those kind of miracles. Even my dad always talked about this experience when um, a while back, like before I was born, like my mom just met him, and he got into a really bad car accident, and he was pronounced dead. Like, and then they put him in a coma, and his parents were praying for him. And to see that my dad is here today, and plus, like, this wasn't even the first time this wasn't the only time my dad got into a car accident. Like, there were other incidents, and my dad was able to make it out alive in one piece. So that's how I was able to understand like the miracles. Like, it's not. I mean, in the sad reality, I don't want to just say, "Oh, this happened to my dad." Um, this could happen to anybody else, and then we have people who have not lived to tell the story of whatever tragedy. And I want to be as sensitive as possible that it's not because God sees people differently. Like, there's people who have survived COVID, who were going through life, using life support, and now God was able to intervene. But then there's people who pass, and we don't understand. And that's something that I can say is I don't know why God allows stuff like that to happen. And it's sad that we have people in our community, in our faith community, that would try and come up with an answer, and that's detrimental to people. Um, as far as prophetic, Hannah, your approach of what you're saying, for me, like, that's, you have that prophetic intercessor. I see it as a gift of discernment. When we talk about spiritual gifts, so that's that discernment. I always talk about my dad because, I'm a daddy's girl, and of course my mom. So my dad has that gift of discernment. My dad could see like something's going on. Something's going on. When I was younger, I was encouraging my dad because there was a time that being an entrepreneur and not getting that kind of cash flow. And I just said out of nowhere by faith, I said, Daddy, um, you're gonna get paid, and it's gonna come back at you 1,000-fold. I just said it like that, and I think I was, how old was I? I was like in my late teens, and I'm saying this, because I have faith that, like, I knew it may not come right now, but I know it's going to come eventually, and it's going to come a thousandfold. My dad gets paid; he's getting paid extra than what he expected, and I said, Dad, remember I told you this. Maybe God allowed that because during that time, like, my parents were trying to figure out if I was really called to be a pastor, and we could talk about this like in a different segment, so I'm not gonna go into it. But yeah, but for us, we do believe that God works in mysterious ways, even from the crazy stories in the Bible, the story of Jonah, even like Lazarus. Like, Jesus was basically telling his disciples that, we're doing this so that the work of God will be glorified, so that Jesus could be the Son of God. But we should not only just dwell on signs and miracles, because there is a warning that Jesus had, that there is a generation that's going to be depending on signs and miracles, and that's dangerous. So it was a prophetic message. Like, to be a prophet, you are basically the Hebrew word for prophet means a mouthpiece. Like, you're basically God's mouthpiece. You're just an extension of God's voice. So whatever you call it, when we have Ellen White was a messenger, and that's what prophets are. They're messengers. She was able to see things happen, and she was able to call them out. Especially with issues of social justice, she called things out and about how detrimental it is in our society. So that is all I have for now. And I mean, I can go on and on. And I really do enjoy this time with these ladies, these beautiful ladies. And I'm looking forward to talking more, having more conversations. So count me in.
Thank you. All right, Margot, Elise, and Zainab, your faith's perspective on the prophetic and miracles. In Christian faith, you call them miracles, signs, and wonders because they are not normal daily. Like, I shouldn't say it's normal. You don't see them all the time unless you operate in that. Then you will see it all the time. So, your faith's perspective on the prophetic and miracles.
Should I go? I didn't hear anybody else volunteer. So with Judaism, so I do think that, I know in almost every religion they say, like, God will see you through it, or you just need to pray, or if you pray to God and you work hard and you do right by others, you'll get it back to you. But and that is something that I don't know how much in my family it's used, because I think my family's similar to me, that they're less religious than other people. So I think they're just like, okay, if you work hard, you'll most likely get what you're working towards. But if you don't, that's the way life goes. And I don't think that a lot of Jewish people are into the whole prophecy, the whole. I do think that there are miracles that happen, and I'm sure that very religious people would be like, "Oh, I prayed, and I spoke to God, and I connected to God, and He did this for me." I'm sure religious people would be like that, but I have a feeling that a good portion of Jewish people, they would say this happened, like, this didn't happen because of faith. It happened like either scientifically, or it just happened. And I think also that, and I don't think this is a reflection of being Jewish. I think that there's some people in general. I am somewhat spiritual in terms of, I do like to think that people can connect with people in the afterlife, or you can, like, feel someone's energy, or you can be around a situation where you feel like something bad is gonna happen, and then you find out something does. I don't think that has anything to do, in my case, being Jewish, because I feel like people in my family are not like that. I'm like that because I feel like I can pick up on sometimes people's energy, or if there's a dangerous situation, or kind of thinking, I think this could happen, and then it happens. But in my case, I don't believe that's necessarily religion based. I think for me, that's more spiritually based. I don't want to keep anybody so the next person can speak, because I know we've been on for almost 3 hours.
And I didn't mean for it to be that long. Sorry. All right. So Margot or Zainab?
I'll comment quickly. And I'm going to get, I hope I don't piss people off. So for me, again, I'm a scientist. So I'm a scientist more than anything. And so science and logic has taught me that there is a rhyme or reason for everything. Sometimes we just don't know it yet because technology hasn't gotten there. We don't know what the right question to be asking is. So from my perspective, I don't believe in miracles. I think there is an answer. It's just we don't know it yet, maybe because science hasn't gotten there. Just the same way as we didn't used to have the ability to treat cancer, and people would die much younger. Science has gone light years in advance, and now we have the ability to help people with this. So for me, miracles don't exist. And I'm sorry, guys. I'm not trying to be a jerk.
No, you don't have to apologize. It's your view. You're allowed to have your view. Your view is accepted, appreciated, and respected here. So no, it's okay for you to be science first and logic first because you're looking at it from a very different perspective. So it's okay. It's like for me, it was hard to accept the prophetic because I'm a historian. So I need to know that history said this. So logically, I'm going to say, well, history repeats itself. Well, history cannot repeat something that's going to happen 6 months later and you wear a green dress because history in the past did not say that you would wear a green dress. So I completely understand. What are your views on the prophetic? Kind of having knowledge of something that you would not normally have knowledge of, or getting information about something that is to come.
So I think, again, that's based in science and logic. So an example is there are people who say, God, the only example I'm coming up with is what Cheyenne was talking about. So like, this is going to come off as me trying to mansplain it, except I'm a woman. And so she had mentioned she had this, I'm going to butcher this, but she had this sort of thought and a dream, maybe is what she said, about her great-grandmother, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And she could describe the person to a T, yet she had never seen this person. She had never seen a picture. However, there has been evidence that at very young ages that we cannot speak, we cannot walk, we cannot have motor skills, that we actually remember things that there are things in our brain that have happened that we don't consciously remember. And so perhaps in that scenario, we're looking at something that was remembered but not consciously that became part of the conscious. I am totally butchering this. I'm sorry. I guess I'm just saying that in terms of like the prophetic, I think there's always logic and science behind it. But again, we just don't know it yet.
No, you're not butchering it. You're expressing it from your perspective, and it's totally okay. You're good. Z, your response, and then we'll wrap up after this.
Okay. Try to keep it short, sweet, and to the point. So, in terms of Islam, I'm not sure if there are a bunch of stories or a bunch of people that would say that. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're prophecies, right? I don't want to butcher anything because the truth of the matter is, no, I don't read the Quran every single day and can tell you just stories, just off the top of my head. Personally, I believe in miracles. I believe that there are prophets walking amongst us, be them past or present. And I guess to kind of like sum it up in short, for me, my own miracle, besides being present for a birth, is that last year I had major surgery, brain surgery. and I had a tumor removed. And it is so weird how that happened because stress kind of triggered all of that. Um, and long story short, I was having these little tics and seizures, didn't know what they were for I don't know how long. And I'm driving, I'm doing all this kind of stuff, driving with my kids in the car. I'm having seizures and not knowing um, that I'm having a seizure, but I'm making it to my destination safely every single time. When I think back to it, Hannah, I was having tics and seizures with our friend on the bus, not even knowing those what that was, um, and nothing ever happened. That's a miracle. That is amazing. That I'm driving my car, well, driving the husband's car, and I'm having seizures, and I don't know that I'm having them, but I'm making it to Long Island. I'm making it to the Bronx. I'm making it wherever. Um, and I didn't crash, and nothing. I didn't fall out. Um, it is a miracle. COVID pretty much saved my life. Not that I got COVID, but because everything got shut down and my children were forced to be remote learners and to be home, then all of a sudden, I guess for me, God was like, okay, we need to get this problem resolved. So, boom, I need this to happen to you. And stress triggered it. But this major seizure came on, and my children were home. Everyone was home. And I think about that all the time. Like, if this would have happened 2 months ago, I would have been home with just toddlers by myself. Who was calling 911? Um, and so for me, that's a miracle. It's a miracle that the size of the tumor, they were able to remove it, every bit of it. Nothing's there, gone. That I had the best surgeons working on me, and that the neurosurgeon was able to, or the neurologist rather, was able to detect it, find it, make the appointments, boom, 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 get it done. For me, that's a miracle. And so I guess I would say I am my own walking miracle, which I'm very thankful for. Um, but again, in Islam, I'm sure there are a lot of different stories. I don't want to butcher anything myself, but I do believe in miracles. I do believe in prophecies. I do believe in prophets. Um, and that's all I'll say because we've been on here for a while. Um, yeah,
I
well,
think
I look forward to the next part of this.
I think this hands down has to be the longest session I've had. Um, yeah, so with that, I will say we have to have a part two because there are other things I would love to address. Going more into religion versus relationship. And as believers, we can have, or as Christians, sorry, we can have um such a religious mindset that we almost suck having relationship with others out of it. So we're so focused on doing everything right, that we're not even realizing that we're not relating to people as people, right? And then building relationships with people individually so that we're creating or being a part of these harmonious environments. So there will definitely be a part two. Look forward for that. Thank you so much, ladies, for coming on and for chatting. I really appreciate your sacrifice. Vidya, you can go to being a mama because I'm quite sure your children may be stirring in the house now. And for the online viewers that are still sticking around, I am so grateful for your sacrifice, um, and for willing to be present, and for asking your questions. I will write down all of the questions I didn't get a chance to ask, and we'll address them at the next talk because some of them were really, really, really good. We just did not have time to get there. So thank you so very much for coming on. I greatly appreciate you. Love you loads. Bye.
Thank you so much for inviting, Hannah. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful, and it was great talking to everybody. I'm going so many learnings over here. You know, especially everybody's that you add on to life. Thank you so much, so much. Pleasure, pleasure.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Bye.
All right, love bug. See ya.